Welcome to the webinar on product management for a remote agile workplace. Working remotely has become common, especially if you're in the software industry. And I'm Dhananjay Mahajan. I'm here to talk to you about the learnings that I had, some of the things I learned from my mistakes, some of the things I was able to do successfully working remotely, which I've done for many years in multiple companies, small and large organizations, and even before the pandemic. And hopefully my learnings will help you become better product managers. So this has become even more important in a post-pandemic world. As we all know, remote hybrid work culture, which started a while back, has become more prevalent. We thought that when the pandemic started, it was going to be a short time thing, but companies have changed their work styles, teams have changed and adapted to the work styles to be successful in this new world. It's going to be the norm. We have to rethink about how customers are doing, how we can help customers in this new world. And you learn some of the various ways we have adapted. Some companies have successfully adapted, and through my personal experience, how we adapted to deal with customers and delight our customers. And success at the workplace will be true with these different work styles that you can adapt. I'm going to go based on my past experience. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. Dhananjay Mahajan, I started as a software design engineer right after I was out of school and joined Microsoft in the Windows team. And later on, my customer obsession took me towards adapting a program manager or product manager role. And my last job at Microsoft was working with several teams, several partners that were building cloud services on top of Microsoft's Azure platform, which made me work more in a remote environment with remote teams across regions. And that was my first experience working on it. Then I went to Avanade, where I was actually driving a cloud management portal product, which managed customers' infrastructure in the cloud through a single centralized portal. And at that time, I had teams in 3 different continents in 5 or 6 different time zones at any point of time. That really helped me understand the benefits as well as the pitfalls of working remotely. Worked at Oracle, then worked in the startup, which was a Kubernetes-based startup called Heptio. There, because we had to go in a totally nascent industry where we had to go wherever across the globe and across the country to find the right talent, the right developers, the right engineers who can work on our product, which was truly cutting edge back then, called Kubernetes. We had a remote first culture. And at Amazon, I was working on the product advertising API, which is used by over 15 marketplaces across the globe and customers to sell products on Amazon. And finally, I was back at Microsoft working on Azure data right around the mid of the pandemic last year. So also got an experience of working as a new hire. I'm going to use all these experiences to share things that I learned over a long period of time. It wasn't like though I was working in Seattle, I had to and forced to work with several regions around the world, several countries around the world. And that gave me the preparedness for this pandemic, which was not truly planned. So I ended up happening to be ready for the pandemic, and I was able to adapt much more quickly than I would have if I had never been working in a remote environment. Now I'm going to go at a level where it is focused on the 3 core constituents that product managers deliver to: customers, leaders, and stakeholders, as well as the team, most importantly, that helps us deliver our vision. I'm not going to go into the tactical details of how to use tool or how to run a web meeting successfully or video conferencing tips and ideas. There are lots of talks that go into it on how to drive teams remotely. I'm going to focus more on the approach of we as a product manager who is looked upon as a leader, a single-threaded leader to deliver a product, to deliver a service to our customers and delight them. So I'm going to talk more about the trends, and I'm going to also cover a few things, but may not be able to cover all the details. So I'll give you my contact information in my blog where you can get the additional detail. So with that, let's get started. I'm sure work has changed, and there are certain benefits and certain disadvantages. We happen to be fortunate in an industry where we can run work remotely. There are some people who are in the services industry who are rather unfortunate, and their whole companies and the style that they work has changed, and several of them have got unemployed as a result. So I consider myself very fortunate for that, and retooling yourself, if those of you who are considering a software product role, you should definitely consider that, because many of the software companies have thrived in this environment. Though there are some disadvantages, as you can see, my home and work life all melt together. What I wear as my pants don't matter, as long as up above I'm well dressed and professional looking. It also gives me a level of comfort. 60% of people feel disconnected from their teams. That's another disadvantage. The camaraderie of what you would have at a water cooler is now gone. We have long work hours. Our work hours, the days and evenings and nights all melt together. But that also gives us a flexibility of a work-life balance. 30% workers in my industry, the information workers, are feeling burnt out. So it's really, really important to know the disadvantages if you don't take these factors into account. Microsoft had done a great survey. I looked at several research from various research organizations in major industry journals and so on. And I like the Microsoft research, and you'll see that some of the findings I've drawn are also from other research, which I'll mention on my blog. 48% increase in team chats. As you saw, Zoom actually took off when the pandemic was hit. Twice as many chats are happening after office hours. So you really have to get used. I got into such a habit that many of my partners or many of my team members who were in a different continent, in a different time zone, always thought I was in their same time zone, because after adapting, I was able to deliver them the same high quality of engagement that they would have expected if I was sitting in the desk right next to them. That's why we as product managers rely on a whole bunch of team members, our engineers, our designers, our cross-functional leaders to get our job done. We have to adapt. We have to be the leaders. We get leadership without the authority. So it's really important that we reimagine. I'm not saying reinvent yourself, but reimagine how you do your work if you're an experienced product manager, or you will be bound to failure if you try to adapt the same techniques as you've done in the past. Now, there are some advantages of this new workplace too, and I consider those as opportunities. There's new work-life balance, and those who have used it have found that there are 75% who have found a closer connection to their family, and that can be fulfilling. Many people have small children, school-going children who are going to school from home, and they're able to balance that with their jobs as well. Access to global talent. Like I said, on some of my prior companies and even in the current company, I can go globally and reach out to any talent in the most efficient manner because I'm able to work remotely. And you should think about the same. It's flattening of the world. Global customer reach. The other day I was on a call with 3 customers in 3 different continents, and it was a public holiday in the US. That is possible only because of this new remote work culture where everybody is remote. That gives you round-the-clock productivity. At the same time, your day doesn't end. But 52% of remote-friendly workers like me, who were remote-friendly from the get-go, are feeling a lot more included. So there are definitely a lot of advantages. Now, as I mentioned, what I'm going to go over is 3 key stakeholders, their challenges, and how, through my experiences, I adapted to the situation to make sure that I deliver on my commitments as a product manager, team delivers, and delights customers. The 3 key stakeholders, as we all know, are customers, your team that's delivering for you, and the leadership. So let's dive into each one of these and see what challenges they face. Now, what has happened to customers is that there is delayed procurement, adoption of new technologies has slowed down. When I was at Amazon, as I said, I owned the API and the SDK that was used by a lot of our customers writing apps to access the entire Amazon catalog. And we noticed there was a slowdown in supply chains. We were not able to fulfill a lot of the orders. There were certain types of categories that after the pandemic went up. It was also difficult to stay engaged with the customer. I'm finding it even now that, the ways we would do customer visits has completely changed. You can't visit the customer anymore. The customer may not be, if they have factories and physical locations, may have a challenge keeping control of their environments. There's ambiguity of plans. They don't know what budgets they have. Their finances are not 100% sure. There's unavailability of resources, people, restrictions in certain regions. I've had challenges where I was trying to contact my team in India, but India went into a sudden lockdown, and halfway through a meeting, my engineering team had to leave because they had to be home by a certain point of time. So it has been a chaotic time for our customers, and it is our duty as product managers to keep the customer first. So let me tell you about the situation I handled with. Like I said, customer behavior has changed, and we have to help adapt to that customer behavior. So what has happened is that when the pandemic happened, as I told you, the situation was, it brought problems to a lot of the retail teams and merchants that were selling on Amazon. And we owned the API that would give access to catalog listings of what is being sold through Amazon. We were in the process of migrating customers from a V1 of the product to the V2 of the product. So customers had to change and adopt new technology. And yet when the pandemic hit, all these ambiguities showed up. We found that customers were not able to get the acquired resources to do the transition from a V1 product to a V2 product. We actually used that opportunity to slow down and offer customers both products side by side so they can continue to use their existing product as well as they go through a phased upgrade. We use the opportunity to engage very closely with our customers and actually help them through the move and give some very prescriptive guidance and hands-on approach to help them make those moves. When the supply chain was hurting, we made sure that we can control what types of categories of products are promoted and which ones are not. So for example, medical products became important. A lot of the products that are used for cleaning and supplies became more important. It was less important to have entertainment and books as products. So we were able to use the knobs in our backend to change the products that we were promoting and the ones that we wanted to demote. We throttled capacity. As you can see, lots of, as now in hindsight you saw, but we were in the throes of it where we saw demand just shoot up and we were running out of capacity. So what we did is we dialed down certain features which were not used regularly by customers and dialed up the most commonly used features. We were able to do that because we had adapted the product to be able to dial up and dial down capacity. An important aspect of when you have these peaks, especially during the pandemic, on things that are unanticipated, you want to design a product that can scale up, scale down, or scale sideways as required. This resulted in increased customer satisfaction. You already know from the results that Amazon faced phenomenal growth in terms of retail sales, and a lot more customers moved towards online sales. That's the way you want to delight customers and make sure that they're happy during the pandemic. Another stakeholder that we need to consider is our team. Like I said, our team helps us deliver the product. Without our team, product managers and program managers would be of no value. We have a vision, we can deal with ambiguity, but ultimately it's our developers who write the codes, the designers who design and make our vision happen into a reality, change their strategy into an outcome, a result. That's why we want to understand what our teams are going through. As I mentioned early on, our teams are working long hours. There is lack of structure in the work that they have been given, in their day, in the guidance they've been given. They have to attend a lot more meetings if things are not efficiently managed. There's also the water cooler or going out for lunches is gone, so the camaraderie is missing. New people are assimilated into the team, but nobody ever meets them. They don't feel like they're part of the team. The culture is hard to create, especially for new companies, new teams. It is very hard to create a culture. And tasks that these teams are depending on, I have observed people will just wait until someone tells them, oh yeah, you should ask Sam or you should ask Dhananjay what's going on. So literally, sometimes you have to unblock your team so that interdependent tasks are bubbled up and they can be more productive and less frustrated about it. Let's take a situation that I was in. Our team was working remotely, and as I told you, when I was at Accenture, my team was spread out in 3 different continents. You are in 4 different countries: US, UK and Italy, and India. And in 5 time zones, and I had to literally drive the team. How do you work with a team and make this efficient? Initially, when we started the work, everybody had to be in every meeting, and it is virtually impossible to get those 3 continents at the same time working together. There was only 1 hour in the entire day. So imagine what would be the mess if some decisions were not made during that 1 hour. It became the most critical hour for us, 9 a.m. Pacific or 8 a.m. Pacific, depending on daylight savings time. What we did is we took that up and really divided the work into teams functionally so that we enabled autonomy, at the same time delivered results. So we took the team, and this applies, by the way, for any project, okay? Not just the one that we did. I was working, as I mentioned to you, on a cloud portal that is used by enterprise IT or any customer, a user, to manage servers running in the cloud, to manage databases running in the cloud, to manage their applications running in the cloud. Typically, these type of products, and you must have seen AWS portal or Azure portal, has a front end, which is a front end user experience of a portal where a customer goes and logs in and looks at all their servers and manages them. Another piece was the back end, and I'm simplifying this just for the sake. And a third piece was a component that did the billing, metering, usage for the customer. So these 3 systems could be subdivided, and there was not exact interaction between them. That's what's called a pooled interdependence. So you want to subdivide your product, your project into multiple components and have teams working intact on each of those components so that you can pool and parallelize the work in at the same time. Those teams internally can work very closely, but they don't have to deal with each other except for specific points of integration. That's where the sequential interdependence came up. For example, and that's how we made progress, by the way, on the UX separately from the backend and separately on the billing and usage logic. However, there was sequential interdependence. For example, if a customer wants to go and start up a server, the backend had to provide the API, the functionality, so that the server could be launched and the automation can manage the entire server. So the backend had to be developed first, and that was the sequential interdependence between the front-end portal team and the backend team. That's where that had medium level of complexity, and we intentionally aligned the sprints in such a way that the backend had to be completed before the front end can do its work to finish the entire experience. Reciprocal complex dependence is the most complex dependence. The reciprocal dependence requires integrated collaboration. Let's take the design of the UX, the front end, where the designer and the product manager and potentially a developer working on the UX sit together and plan it. For that, we required a lot more intricate work, and those teams were done as intact teams, and eventually those teams would go and do reviews with the other key stakeholders in the back end and the cost team so that they get feedback, eventually come back and improve it. So by dividing these into understanding for every product, every fairly medium to large complex product, you can divide that into pooled, sequential, and reciprocal dependencies and appropriately assign projects accordingly. Now, it is very important. Initially, all these three teams worked really well together, but when the product came together, it wasn't something we could release to customers because they all worked independently. So what we did as product managers is for each of the sprint, we decided a theme and key end-to-end scenarios that we wanted to deliver. And throughout the sprint, each team kind of worked together, and then we would have an integration sprint where we would bring all of this together. We documented all the designs, made sure the release plans are clearly worked out, and appropriate resource assignments were made with proper buffering so that the launches happened in time. This allowed us, despite having teams in 3 different locations in 3 different continents, to be able to deliver a product. It was just a great learning experience through all the good and bad of it. Also, the other thing is the EQ that we need to do as product managers. As you know, we want highly motivated teams. It was easier to motivate team members when we were all together. I know at Microsoft, we had a great ritual of going to movies together or having team lunches, impromptu lunches, going out for a coffee. All of those things are gone, and teams feel disconnected. I joined a new team. I have not yet met many of my team members, except a few that we decided to meet. So as product manager, it's really important that we keep in mind to build that camaraderie. Our startup, the startup that I worked at, where I was the head of product, was a great example. We had to hire people wherever we found them. We couldn't find all of them in Seattle. Of course, with all the major cloud companies in Seattle, it was hard to wean away talent from those major companies. But yet we wanted to be an intact team. And plus, like I said, we were working on a bleeding edge product. So we started the company with a remote first culture, assuming that even if I sat next to my engineer, we would both get on to, back then we used Zoom calls, and record every meeting, record every decision. So it became really important that though we were sitting together, a few of us in a given location as a team, we treated by default as a remote company. And that got me really thinking like the way we are doing now, which is a remote first culture. Every decision in the meeting was recorded. Every meeting was intentionally planned with a clear agenda. We had recurring meetings that happened at a company level, at the product management level, at the engineering product level. So everybody expected. We had somebody who was in a completely different time zone in the southern hemisphere, and yet that person would get all the recordings and be able to keep up with the decision making that was happening. We also had rituals that we created professionally. Being geeks, we would have hackathons and bug bashes for major milestones, but we also did informal things like we had an office in downtown Seattle. So once a week, our group administrator would order lunches for all of us. We would put in our orders, pay for our lunches, and we would all get them together and have the lunch together. At the same time, we would have virtual lunches with our team buddies in New York and Philadelphia and other places around US. Some other companies I was at, we would have games, we would do cooking together. And we really created that matrix communication patterns up the chain with leadership as well as across the team, and made sure that all the communication, all the meetings are open. That truly led to a great camaraderie on the team. And those kind of communication habits actually go a long way. A great example is the open source community, how open source has been building despite sourcing engineers who give their free time, or sometimes big companies who are working together and competing at the same time. It's an amazing example if you can work remotely and see the benefits of it. Now, as I mentioned, I joined as a new PM. I also asked a few of my ex-colleagues who changed over from other professions to becoming a PM. What are the tips in this remote work environment when you may have not even gone to work one single day? How do you become successful, especially doing the switch? Most important thing is, as you join, start with the right foot forward, work with your manager or your lead, and set up a prioritized 30, 60, 90-day plan on what should be accomplished, what's realistic. One great thing I learned was set up a connection with all the stakeholders. Have a plan on who you'll meet in 30 days and who you'll meet in 60 days, and you'll make some great connections. And everybody has become a little more open to having this remote work culture. Prioritize your time for learning. There's a lot of opportunity to do learning now. Everything's available online. So use that opportunity to ramp up and learn about your technology, your area, and take risks. You're going to fail. Nobody's watching over your shoulder. So just set the right expectations. And if you're a manager of product managers, let your team members take some risks, innovate. We have to think outside the boxes. The entire environment has changed, and the pandemic has brought some new dynamics to it. And if you are a new hire PM, seek the help of a manager, set up a buddy, maybe rotate your buddies with different functional areas. That will make you successful. Last but not the least, our stakeholders, our leadership. And this is a combination, last section is a combination of you working with leadership and making sure that your leadership gets good visibility, but at the same time, you working as a leader for your team, on behalf of your team. What's happening with the leadership? While they're quarantined, they feel like decision making will stop. Nobody can make decisions. They have loss of visibility. They feel lack of control. They don't know what's going on. Decision making becomes slow. They start micromanaging. If they don't have the trust is broken, it can be a spiral, and it can impact your business, and it can impact your team. It can impact your customer. Remember, the most important thing is product manager. You want to build a foundation of trust across all these three key stakeholders. And with missing face time with your manager or with the bosses for the engineering teams, they feel they're not going to get promoted or not going to get the benefits of the efforts they're putting in. So it's really, really important that you take this into account. And you want to create a way your leadership style would change based on the situation. Firstly, if you're a leader or if you're a leader yourself, which all product managers should strive to be, think about two things. With the pandemic coming in, you want to promote innovation. You want to promote a collaborative atmosphere to get results done, but at the same time, you want to focus on results. So use a switch between a transformational style and a transactional style. In a transformational style, you want to be a lot more encouraging to the team to take on some new risks, some new opportunities, some new ways of doing things. And that becomes really critical for them to innovate, give them some autonomy, let them make some mistakes, learn from their mistakes, and do course corrective actions. This requires you to be a bit more charismatic. So just keep that in mind, as you will have to connect a lot with the team on your own, yet at the same time not become a micromanager. Same thing for your leaders. Make sure that you give them the vision, you give them the strategy, but also show to them how you're delivering on things. And that's where, based on the situation, based on the culture of your team as well as your leaders, you want to switch over to more of a style that I said was transactional or results oriented. That's where you're using specific ways to make sure the team is delivering on results, measuring the productivity of the activities the team is doing, making sure that they're not getting burnt out in the process, and then most importantly, celebrating the success, making them look like heroes in front of the leadership so they don't feel like they're not getting rewarded, they're not getting micromanaged, and feeling like they're part of the team. Remember, your team is going to help you deliver and delight your customers. It's important that you have the right management style to help motivate your team. If you don't motivate them the right way, you will find that productivity will slow down and burnout would happen. And it's a spiral that is going to be hard to control. So I covered kind of just the tip of the iceberg of how we as product managers need to change. Through my experiences, through things I've studied, through discussions I've had with my colleagues, there's more, and I'm just beginning the conversation, so I'm sure each of you has tremendous knowledge and experience by now, having worked in this environment, and I would love to hear from you, learn from you what your problems are, and maybe even help work with you in solving those problems to deliver innovative products to delighted customers and have agile, motivated, remote-friendly team environment through your adaptive leadership style. So let's continue the conversation. Here are links. Connect with me on LinkedIn or DM me or follow me on Twitter or send me an email. And let's stay connected. Let's all build great products to service our customers. Finally, I want to thank Product School for the opportunity. I want to thank each one of you for taking your time and joining and having another web meeting, because I know all of us are fatigued with web meetings. And I, last but not the least, also want to thank some of my colleagues like Alex, who helped walk me through this situation and understand how and bring other perspectives into this conversation. So thank you again, and let's continue the conversation online. and stay connected. Stay safe, everyone, and thank you again.